Hi there, Phineas MacGuire Erupts, chapters 9 and 10. I think I have mentioned the fact that I'm allergic to girls. My mom says you can't actually be allergic to other human beings, but she's wrong about that. Here is my scientific reasoning. A person can be allergic to animals, right? When this happens, it's usually because of their dander. If the word dander reminds you of dandruff, that's because it's just like dandruff. It is flaky skin that comes off and gets into the air and into people's noses. Okay, and there's a picture. You might find out a little more about that one in just a minute. Which is kind of gross if you think about it for too long. If you are allergic to an animal's dander, you will spend a lot of time sneezing your head off if you get near that kind of animal. Your skin will also start to do weird things. Once I did this experiment where I touched a cat on purpose, and then I videotaped the hives coming out on my arms. It was really cool until they started to itch. They itched for 3 hours. It was a pretty stupid experiment if you want to know the truth. People's skin flakes off all the time. My mom won't let my stepdad wear anything black or dark blue because he has dandruff like snowflakes falling from his head. I'm not allergic to my stepdad's dander, but theoretically I could be. Dander is the way I see things. And if I could be allergic to my stepdad, I could be allergic to girls. Maybe most girls have extra flaky skin, and that's why they make me itch so bad. Since I'm allergic to girls and not friends with any girls, you wouldn't think that I'd care about Aretha Timmons' opinion. I should just try to stay away from her the way I stay away from peanuts and cat hair. But the fact is, Aretha Timmons is my only fellow scientist in Mrs. Tuttle's 4th grade class. There are some other kids who get A's in science like me and Aretha, but that doesn't automatically make them scientists. Once Aretha asked me if she could look at my copy of Scientific American when I was done reading it. She wanted to read an article about DNA. Later, when I asked her if she had understood it, she said she had understood about 25%, which is 24% more than I had understood. Also, I have noticed that Aretha gets very excited when we start a new science unit. Her eyes sort of light up and she pops her pencil hard on her desk. It's happy popping, like she's ready for the show to get on the road. For some reason, I've never felt allergic to Aretha. Maybe in an alternate universe, we'd be friends, working together in a lab, wearing white lab coats with our names stitched across the front pocket. In this universe, though, we aren't getting along too well. The second we finished saying the Pledge of Allegiance this morning, I felt Aretha's pencil pop on my shoulder. When I turned around, it was like she'd never stopped glaring at me from the day before. "You were going to lose at the science fair big time," she told me. "I'm going to stomp you and Mac, too, into the ground." "His name is Ben," I said, "and he's not as bad as you think he is." Picture. He was just going through an obnoxious stage right when he moved here. It felt good to stick up for Ben. That's one of the coolest things about being friends with somebody. You stick up for them, they stick up for you. Like the time last year James Long accused Marcus of stealing his idea for a science report, and I dumped my lunch tray on his head. That felt really good, watching the sloppy Joe junk slide down his nose, especially since I got away with it. I am always dumping my lunch tray on somebody, only usually it is an accident. Just because it turns out he can draw doesn't mean he's so great, Aretha said. I'm sad to see he's got you fooled just like all the rest of them, though. Anyone can see that he's just using you for your scientific knowledge. When it's time for the science fair, he's just going to pull you down. You're going to lose for sure. I tapped my fingers on my desk, and I didn't want Aretha to hate me just because she hated Ben. On the other hand, I didn't think her behavior was very scientific either. Where is your evidence that he has me fooled? How do you know that you're right and I'm wrong? What data have you collected? What experiments have you run? Aretha shook her head. She popped her pencil sadly on her desk. She sighed and said, I've got the evidence that that's in front of my own eyes. I've got 3 weeks of observed behavior. You've got a comic book. She looked at her pencil for a minute, like maybe it would tell her why I'd made the huge mistake of becoming friends with Ben. Then she stuck it behind her ear. Well, I guess that's just less competition for me at the science fair. I turned back around. All of a sudden, I wished that Marcus was still there, so we could be doing the science fair together, because Aretha was probably right. When you added me and Ben together, we didn't make some great scientific team that you'd be reading about in books someday. What you got was a good scientist and a really good artist. Together, that didn't automatically add up to first place at the 4th grade science fair. It had never occurred to me that I might not win first place at the 4th grade science fair. It was occurring to me now. But I was pretty sure Aretha was wrong about Ben. I didn't think he was using me for my scientific brain. I wanted to prove she was wrong, but I didn't know how. I guess that would have to be up to Ben. Getting our science fair project started would definitely be up to me. I rode my bike over to Ben's apartment after school for a brainstorming session. It was hard to get him in a scientific mood, though. He had a notebook full of drawing orders placed by people in our class. Are they playing you? I asked him. Ben shook his head. No, this is my plan for getting people to like me again. You mean to like you for the first time, I said. You could put it that way, Ben said, but I like the way I said it better. I took out my science journal, ready to get down to business. If we were going to have a chance at winning first prize at the science fair, we didn't have a minute to waste. Okay, the way I see it, we need to plan the building of the volcano, the construction of the landscape around the volcano, the erupting of the volcano, and the use of any multimedia materials that the judges might give us extra points for. You definitely need to draw some cross-sections of a volcano so people can understand what the inside looks like before lava starts flowing and after it starts flowing. No prob, Ben said. He held up a picture of Michelle Lee's dog. They sort of look the same, don't you think? Who looks the same? I asked, looking up from my journal. Sure. Michelle and her dog, he said. I mean that in a good way. I held up my journal and waved it in the air. Hello, are you planning on helping with this project or not? I'll help. Don't get all stressazoid on me, Ben said, scratching his ear with his pencil while he studied the picture of Michelle Lee's dog. I'll take care of the whole volcano business. My mom got me a piece of plywood to build it on. All you have to do is draw me a diagram for the inside of the volcano. You can be in charge of all the big brain stuff like the writing part. That sounded like the less fun part to me, if you want to know the truth. But Ben was an artistic genius and would build an amazing volcano. I could make a volcano with a soda bottle, but I can't even make a paperweight out of clay. I opened my journal back up and started drawing volcano diagrams for Ben. I'll get my mom to buy us a plastic tube to put the vinegar and baking soda in for the eruption, I said. I'll need to build around that. What we're trying to demonstrate here is that lava can overcome gravity and be pushed through the Earth's rock crust. Since we can't actually use real lava, we kind of have to create a simulation using gas created by this baking soda and the vinegar. Ben wasn't paying attention to anything I said. He held up his drawing of Michelle's dog. It looked exactly like the photo, except it had artistic style to it now. There's a picture. Let's see. That dog really does look like Michelle, I said. It's sort of amazing. Ben smiled. Next, I'm doing a drawing of Roland Forst's Chihuahua. The two of them are practically twins. Maybe that could be our science fair project next year, a study of why people look like their pets. My brain started getting very excited about that idea. Some of that excitement went right into my pencil, and I actually did some really good volcano drawings for Ben to use when he started to build the volcano. I was amazed by how good they were, if you want to know the truth. That's the great thing about science, in my opinion. It will make you excited about everything in the world. Chapter 10. Quick pictures. I thought the week before the science fair would be pretty ordinary. Ben and I would work on our project in the afternoons. I would do my other homework at night. My mother would be irritated by 95% of the things that happened to her on a daily basis, and my stepdad would order takeout food 3 nights in a row, even though every week he and my mom say they are going to quit ordering takeout and do real cooking. Whoops. But this has turned out to be one of the weirdest weeks I've had all year. Here is what happened. On Monday, my nose started bleeding in math. There were big splotches of blood all over my desk. It looked really neat. Mrs. Tuttle sent me to the school nurse, who is a man named Joe Martinez. In kindergarten, everybody was sort of scared that we had a man nurse, but now we're all used to it. Let me show you something, Mac, Mr. Martinez said while I sat in his office with an ice pack on my nose. He typed something into his computer, and up came a picture of the inside of a nose. What you're looking at is a picture of the anterior septal blood vessels. Mr. Martinez explained to me, pointing at the picture. That means the blood vessels in the front part of your nose. This time of year, your nose gets dried out. It's not uncommon to have a nosebleed or two. Then he swiveled around in his chair and looked straight at me. When I was your age, I did a lot of nose picking. Kids around 9, 10, 11 are notorious nose pickers. Just ask Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed is our school's janitor. How does Mr. Reed know? I asked. Who do you think has to clean all those boogers off the bottom of your desks at the end of the year? Mr. Martinez asked. If anybody knows anything about 4th grade nose picking, it's Mr. Reed. That's a pretty cruddy job, I said. Mr. Martinez nodded. Yeah, but I know you're not the kind of kid who'd put a booger under your desk, are you? I shook my head. I am a completely private nose picker. No picking at school is pretty much a rule I live by. Here's the thing, Mac. Keep the picking to a minimum. It really irritates your nose. This time of year, it's hard to keep your finger out of your nose. I'm sympathetic to that. But you don't want to bleed to death for a bunch of mucus now, do you? My face was a little red by the time I left Mr. Martinez's office, but I haven't picked my nose since. The second weird thing that happened was the art supply closet in Mrs. Tuttle's room got haunted. We've been in school for over a month now, and that closet hasn't made a peep. But all of a sudden, on Wednesday morning, a knock, knock, knock sound came from the back of the room. Everybody said, huh? And turned around to look at the same time. All that's back there is a sink, some cabinets, and the art supply closet. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came again. No doubt about it. It was coming from the art supply closet. Open it up, Mason, Mrs. Tuttle called from the front of the room. Maybe Picasso got locked inside and is trying to get out. No way, Mason said. I'm not opening that thing. He turned to Brandon. Sure. He turned to Brandon Wu, who sits right next to him. You open it. Brandon shook his head no. All along the back row, people were shaking their heads like, don't look at me. Finally, Mrs. Tuttle walked over to open the door. The people in the back row leaned as far away from the art supply closet as they could. The door squeaked. When Mrs. Tuttle tugged on it, then it flew open. A paintbrush fell out. About 7 different people screamed. I couldn't believe what I saw. Absolutely nothing. End of chapter 10.